Welcome to our tutorial about using a subprocedure. We already know a subprocedure is similar to a function procedure, with the major exception being that a subprocedure doesn't return a value associated with a name. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to use a subprocedure to change the value of a variable received in an argument list and to pass this value back to a calling routine. We're going to begin by creating an interface. Let's drag in two label controls. And now let's drag in two text boxes. And we also need two buttons. Let's arrange our form. Something like this. Now let's modify the text property of our labels so the caption reads appropriately to the user. We'll call it List A. Let's change the font to bold, 11 point. Same thing for label B, we'll change the font to bold and 11 point. We'll also change the text property to List B. Now let's change some properties of the first text box. First, let's modify the name. We'll call it TXT List A. Let's make it a multi-line box. We change this property to true. We also need a vertical scroll bar. And let's make it read only. Tab stop, let's set that value to false. We'll do the same for the second text box. We'll name this one TXT List B. Set the multi-line property to true, as well as the vertical scroll bar. The tab stop property will set to false. And read only should be true. Now let's resize both of these text boxes and make them the same size. Now we'll change the button names. Let's call this one BTN List A. We'll change the text property as well, add to List A. Now we'll make the same modifications to our second button. We'll call it BTN List B. And the text property should read Add to List B. Let's resize our buttons as well. Ooh, before I forget, let's fix that spelling mistake. I've got two O's in my two. Let's delete one. Now let's add a module to our project. And let's begin our routine. Public sub. We'll call it Add to List. Open parenthesis, the keyword byval, space. The name of the first parameter will be list num, space as string, comma, space, by ref, and then the name of the second parameter, string return, space as string. Let's close the parenthesis, hard return. Now we'll declare some variables. Dim prompt, comma space, input, comma space, wrap as string. Now we've got three variables. Now let's create some assignment statements. The variable prompt equals, open double quotations, enter name, 2, and close the double quotations, and list name. Sorry, that's list number. Hard return, input, space, equals, space, input box, open parenthesis, prompt, close parenthesis, and hard return. Now wrap, space equals, space, CHR, open parenthesis 13, close parenthesis, plus, CHR, open parenthesis 10, close parenthesis, and enter. String return equals input, space, and wrap. I see a syntax error. Let's correct that first. Secondly, let's take a look at these two keywords in line 2, byval and byref. We referred to these previously in our last lesson. We described the difference between these. Let me remind you of what that is. Byval passes data to the function or subprocedure through the list num argument, but any changes to the argument won't be returned to the calling routine. With byref, on the other hand, any changes to the string return argument will be passed back to the calling routine. Next, let's take a look at the wrap variable. It stores the string of CHR13 plus CHR10. These are ASCII characters. But they're not letters. CHR10 returns a line feed character, and CHR13 returns a carriage return character. Basically, these two characters in a string give us the Windows equivalent of a hard return. The wrap variable ensures that each new variable we enter ends up on a new line in our text box. The end goal of this subprocedure: the changes made to the string argument will pass back to the calling routine. Next, let's go ahead and write the code for our button. I'm going to select button list A and a click event. Now let's declare some variables. Dim str list A will be a string. Next, we'll name the subprocedure, add to list, open parenthesis, open double quotations, list A, close quotations, comma space, and let's enter our second argument, the variable str list A. Close parenthesis, return. Our last line, txt list A period text, space equals txt list A period text followed by a space and space str list A. Let's check for syntax problems. The second argument wants to have some value assigned to it. When we mouse over, a prompt gives us an explanation of what the problem is. Let's make this an empty string. That'll solve our problem. And let's review our logic. What'll happen is that the user will click the button. The two arguments will be passed to the subprocedure add to list. We pass the second argument as an empty string. The changes made to this argument will be returned and concatenated with the string held in the text property of text box txt list A. Okay, we're done with our first button. Let's do the code for the second button now. We'll right-click and copy our code for button 1. And let's right-click and paste. And now we'll make the appropriate changes. We need to change the letters A to B. And here. Next line here and here. We click outside. I don't see any syntax problems, so let's run our program and see how it works. I'm going to click on the Add to List A button. Now we'll add name, last name A. The prompt tells me to enter a name to list A. That's why we use the first argument, to ensure that the user knows he or she is making his entry in list A. Let's click OK. Let's add another name just to make sure our wrap statement is working correctly. The entry does go to the second line, seems to be working fine. Now let's try adding to list B. We'll type in a name. Click OK. Uh-oh, here is the problem. The entries we have to list A are also appearing in list B. Let's get back to our script and find the problem. After I copied and pasted, I missed a letter change. This should be B also. This is what's called a logical mistake. Of course, Visual Basic can't really spot this because the syntax itself is okay. This is something that you will need to be very careful about. Let's run our program again. First, we're going to add to list A. Name 2 looks good. Let's check the second text box. Name 1. OK. Name 2. OK, looks good. Lastly, let's demonstrate the difference between the byref and byval keywords. In my module, I'm going to swap out the byref for byval, and let's see what happens when we run our program. We enter a name to list A, and click OK, but nothing happens. We need to make one more change. Instead of an empty string, we need to assign some value to this string. Namespace, lname. Let's run our program again. We'll enter a name. Click OK. Let's do it again. However, you see that the subprocedure didn't return the change in the argument. And of course, that's because we changed the byref keyword to byval. This concludes our tutorial on using subprocedures.